And we are live, regardless of what the technological issues that we're having. It looks like we're finally live. Welcome to another episode of the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. I'm so glad to be talking about this topic. I think it applies to each and every one of us, regardless of where you're at on your journey towards being an entrepreneur or your business. Entrepreneurs never seem to have enough time, right? But those who are successful seem to get the important things done nevertheless. So today on the Uncensored Entrepreneurs, we will be sharing a few tips on how to get organized, but most importantly, to stay energized along the way. We'll see you on the inside. And welcome. Are we good? Can you hear me okay, Christina?
I can hear you. You sound a bit like a robot, but we'll take it. And the intro cut out like halfway through, paused, and then I got the last end. So I'm glad we're here today. We were just talking like before the show, hey, weird step in technology. Like now we can't stream into groups on social media. It's like, it's a bit glitchy. Like we feel like we've gone back like 10 years. And I'm like, what is going on? Solar flares, cyber attacks, like what's happening today? This is so bizarre. Like, shouldn't we be getting better?
It is. Yeah, you're right. With all this new technology and everything that's came out. And of course, the big buzzword in the last, I say 6 months, but it's really been, for over the last like year and a half is AI, right? It just continues to compound. And the closer we get to what most would consider to be like the heightened level of technology, I feel like you just said, the support is weaker. We're lagging in a lot of different things, and feature wise, it just seems like the benefits aren't there like they used to be. So anyways, I may be crazy, but I'm kind of seeing that across other platforms as well. And, we're going to be talking a little bit about not necessarily, technology is a big part of what we do to stay organized and energized. But I thought it would be a great topic. And you see, we've got a couple people missing today, right, Christina?
Yeah.
So this happens in business. So we kind of shifted gears real quick. And one of the things that we're always constantly, as an entrepreneur, doesn't matter what level of business, but staying organized is so important. And the reason why, I felt it was important to kind of layer in organization and staying energized is because it really goes like, it's one and the same, quite frankly. The better you're at one, it's going to feed into the other. So we're going to talk about that. And then also one of the things I'll talk about in a moment is the technology side of it. I've been looking at some other new purchases, right? Things that kind of help me with organization and things that I enjoy doing. But I also believe being a personal branding person, I think that for each and every person, you have to do what ultimately feels good for you. And so we'll kind of layer that into our conversation today as well. But anyway, so welcome. So Christina, what's going on in your world? How's mom life going and the new baby and everything else?
I think that this is a really great topic, okay, for business people, because your life shifts and changes. You go into different chapters of life.
Yes.
There are some chapters where you are just hustling and giving it everything you got, and there's other chapters where you take your foot off the gas and have everything dialed in. And that's why you hustle, actually. It's like different levels that you get to in business. And so as you move through these different levels, you start to incorporate different things. Maybe you grow a team, you invite people into your business, you hire a VA, or you hire a social media person, or you hire somebody that is going to be a sales recruiter for you, right? Maybe you hire somebody to do your graphics and your websites. And each of these stages takes time and energy and effort to set up. But what they do is they allow you to have more freedom on the other side. And it's so interesting because a lot of people get stuck in the spot that they're in. And, you know, when I was trying to make that first $100,000 mark, you're going to make, like, I hate to say this, but I want to say it out loud because I want people to understand that you're going to make a few $10,000 mistakes on the way to 100,000. Right.
Absolutely. Quite frankly, I mean, and you're lucky if you're getting off at a 10%, loss along that way. In most cases, in order to truly lock down, your first six figures and to make it repeatable, you're typically going to invest about that exact amount, right? Just through lessons learned. Now, the way to avoid a lot of that, of course, is to have mentors, to have coaches, follow people that have actually already walked those steps so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes. But my lessons go way back in time before I was even on social media. And I tell you, I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know that's going to make a lot of people fall out of their chairs, but hundreds of thousands of dollars just in those mistakes, going down a path that really didn't lead to where you wanted, to truly go. So you had to pivot, shift, change with times, change with technology, as we were just saying now. One of my clients, by the way, this last week, and I think it kind of feeds into this whole idea of staying organized and pivoting and thinking about the next steps. They were a copywriter, right? So that's what they've been doing. They've been doing copyright for a long time. And when AI first kind of really hit the scene hard, there was fear. Right. Everyone, and I'm sure those people too, everyone that wrote like hard articles, any type of real content, there was this fear that was going to replace them. And in many cases, it did shift the way. It
might still.
Yeah, right.
Right. I was just looking at Gary Vee, and Gary Vee was talking about what he thinks in the next 5 to 10 years is that AI influencers will take over, that people will own AI agencies and own influencers, so that, because people now want to do faceless marketing. They want to, right? So think about it this way.
It's so funny that you just said that.
Wild. It's wild. But I also want to go back to what you said. You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, I know people freak out when they hear that, but as an entrepreneur, look, $10,000 mistakes to get to $100,000, $100,000 mistakes to get to $1 million.
Seven-figure income. Yeah.
And absolutely. then I'm not there yet, but for consistent $1 million years, you're probably going to have to do $1 million mistakes to get to 10 million, right?
Without a doubt. If we had, you mentioned Gary, Tony Robbins, any of these big influencers, people that have been around for a long time, that are really noted in the world of coaching, as an influencer, they have spent millions. They've lost millions of dollars to get to where they're at today, and all of that was just education, right? But but it took not just major risk, but it's a mindset. It's a mindset and understanding what the ultimate goal is, and just knowing that risk is just part of the game. I hate to say it. And it's, you've heard many times when people get into sales, they quit typically because they're always looking for yes. And they feel personally impacted by no. We know that it's the no's that we're looking for, because it's X amount of no's before we actually hear yes. And it's the yeses that keep us thriving and pointing in the right direction. So it's a mindset. You have to kind of shift the way that you're planning for these things.
And so you can either spend the money on mistakes that you're making, trying to forge your way through, or you can pay tens of thousands of dollars to experts that will tell you how to shortcut that and get to the answer, right? But so many people are scared to put out that kind of money for a mentor or a couple of mentors, right? And they miss the point in that those are the people that are going to move them forward. But that isn't even the topic that we're talking about today.
No.
we're talking about how to stay organized.
But you know what? It feeds into it, right? It still kind of feeds into it because it's part of that journey. And before we actually just dive in, really quick, I do not want to go a step further without actually giving some credit to today's sponsor. Cheryl Jaster is our sponsor for today. She is the podcast mother of the show, and your mother, right? So thank you for being our number one guest always on the show. We do appreciate you, Cheryl. So thank you.
She's on vacation. I think she gets her work ethic from me. She's on vacation. It's my grandmother's,
Look at that.
and I'll have to like send you a photo because it's my grandmother's 95th birthday on the
Oh,
31st of May. So they're doing like a little early birthday thing for her.
yeah. Happy early birthday. Wow.
This woman, she looks amazing. Like she doesn't look a day over 70. I'm so grateful for her genes. Let me tell you. She looks amazing. So they're having a little event. So thanks, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. I know you're busy and having a great brunch this morning. We love you.
Yeah. So thank you. We do appreciate that. But so let's dive into this because there's so many different things, right? Little things that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about how to. We're going to talk about what works and what typically doesn't work or hasn't worked for us in the past. And I think that one thing I just want to kind of make this note right out here, right out front, people that are tuning in or watch the replay later, there's something like, I love this. So I have to just kind of start off with this. It says at the end of the day, and this is kind of a disclaimer for all of us. At the end of the day, we all beat ourselves up over productivity. The key to a good system is to allow yourself to let go, not feel compelled to do everything that's in your brain or on paper. Some tasks that linger are meant to linger on further or completely die.
Wow.
I love that. I love that. I
write that out and have it on my wall.
I've got right. I'll send it to you. I'll actually put it in our chat later because
thank you.
When I read that, I was like, wow, that's so profound. I was searching for, some thoughts around that. And I was like, that is so true. We have to give ourselves permission to not get every single thing done. And as an entrepreneur, for all those that are tuning in, most of us are like perfectionists, right? Not all of us, but many of us are. And so we just feel like if it's on paper, if it's a task that if we do not achieve it, then we've kind of failed at our objective for the day, right? And it's not the case. So we have to give ourselves permission to just let go. So there's a little piece of organization that just it kind of defaults to, you know what? If it didn't happen today, oh well, I can shift it into tomorrow. And at the very end, like it said, some tasks that linger on are meant to die. So just kind of keep that in mind, right? And at what point do you kind of come to that realization? But anyways, someone actually yes, right, Michelle? It's kind of profound because most of us don't think this way. So I think it's a great mindset just to adopt. But what do you think around that? Being a mother, doing all the things you've been juggling. I mean, come on. What do you got, Christina?
Well, I mean, you messaged me 40 minutes ago, and I was like, and said the topic for today, what we're going to talk about, and I was like, well, I am still in bed at 9:30. I've been cuddling with my baby and working from bed, right? And it was interesting because I had this conversation with my husband, and when you do multiple things, right? We all have multiple businesses on this show. We all have multiple streams of income. And so when you do multiple things, how I have learned to operate is in this flow state. So creating content, talking to people, following up with people, doing all this personal development, which ends up turning into lessons for my 6-figure profit plan. Like all of these things start to flow and they happen every day, right? So it doesn't really matter. Like some people like going to 9 to 5, turning off at 5 p.m. and then going back to work the next day, right? But as an entrepreneur, that's not really how it works. And if you can learn this art of the flow, that everything kind of just happens and happens in synchronicity, there will be times where you can do more. There will be times when you can do less, right? Like I did not I got showered today, but I did not get to do my hair, right? Like, I'm just like, okay, so that just didn't happen today because I have a baby at home and he's 10 weeks old. Like,
and that's okay. And
it's
that's
okay.
That's the thing.
But I don't have to put him in daycare, right? I get to sit there while he sleeps in my arms, while I'm sending messages, while I'm creating content, while I'm congratulating people, while I'm doing all these things in the morning. And some people think, well, so you never get a day off. And I'm like, if you love what you do, if you truly work in your zone of genius and you love what you do, it never feels like work. I don't feel like I have a job. I get money that shows up in my account every month. All these things happen. But like, when you learn to kind of just flow with it and like certain things are priority, my family is 100% my priority, right? all of these other things can work around it. And the other secret is you hire out the things that you really don't want to do, because if you don't, you'll procrastinate them and they never get done.
Man, is that true? So all right, so let's just break down some simple fundamentals, and then we can start attaching different thoughts, experiences around it, because those are some really good points that you brought up. One is the fact that when you're just thinking about planning, just in general, as you stated, I found that, and it took me a while to learn this, I found that one great little exercise is to rank everything with a dollar sign. And so what I mean by that is,
I like it.
Whether it's digital or on paper, for me, it's a single dollar, $2 sign, 3 and 4. So, and that's the cost of actually completing that task. And so when you think about it in this perspective, you'll start to look at some of these things and you'll be like, gosh, you know what? That task. It's only, it only requires, and you can look at it twofold. What is it going to cost me, or what is it going to bring me? Right? You can look at it either way. But when you look at a task that costs, $20, $30, $40 for a VA to complete, it's like, is that worth your time, your frustration to learn the system, to go through the headaches of technology not working, like we talked about before, right? Because in that case, they assume the risk as well when they're going to complete a task for X amount of dollars. And so I love being able to do that. It does clear a great deal of stuff off of my calendar. The other thing is, in addition to VAs, I also like to just think of all of my clients as being collaborative partners as well. Meaning, what kind of skill set do they have, since they already have a buy-in, right? They already have a vested interest. What can they do that potentially, would be a great service to myself, but also in serving them with some work along the way and lessons. And so think about it in that context as well. I always like to plug in my clients to sometimes that model. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That's a great project. They may be interested in that. Let me shoot it by them first before I send it to a VA or anyone else. So just a way of kind of looking at those things when it comes to like actual deep dive one-on-one coaching, or true just deep discovery where we're actually getting to, an actual an offer. I'll typically give those, $4 signs, because I find that it's something that I need to be involved in. So no matter what in my schedule, I make time for those big conversations with either people that, are prospects to become clients, or actually my existing clients.
I really like that. I think those are some really excellent tips, and I'm going to start using the money sign tip for my task list, right?
That's easy little thing, right? You just put it in there and you just don't even, it's just a visual thing.
It is. And so the other thing that I would mention with entrepreneurs is we're very fluid, we're flexible, right? And that's why we're entrepreneurs, is because we like having our freedom of time and our freedom of schedule. And so what I would say is there's a difference between scheduling, and some people need to have a very scheduled system and need to be able to do that. And I understand that, absolutely. But once you're like a seasoned vet at this, once you know the activities that are going to make you money, like you said, and have the more dollar signs, right, you just increase your habits, and you do the habits that make you more money every single day. Because what people don't realize, it's the little things that you do every day, not the big, like grandiose things that make you all the money. It's the little tiny tasks that you do every day. And when you master the mundane and you get really good at having conversations, I think that a lot of the time that's overlooked, and people think, well, I don't have time for that because it's going to take me too much time. Like, it's like the thing that they need to do is actually working against them until they create better habits in their life and they prioritize those habits. Because when you prioritize those habits, you make more money, and then you also create more time for the things that you actually love. And the other thing that we talk a lot about is personal branding. So if you think of your life and you have multiple streams of income, and you're like, I have this business, this business, this business, this business. You're like, oh my God, how am I going to do all of these things all at once? How am I going to allocate time for that? But if you build a personal brand and you realize that your job is to serve a certain demographic of people, a certain audience, and you have all these options for them, you're multifaceted in the options and your offers, all you have to do is do one thing and then have a conversation with people on the back end and figure out what part you're going to funnel them into. Right?
Oh, that is so true. That is absolutely so true. And, I've been in the coaching game like for a long time. And first of all, thank you so much for talking about personal branding. You know how that's my baby, right? And so I always talk about that. But I've been in the coaching game for a while, and enough to know that I used to overcomplicate the system and the process.
Yes.
You felt like you needed to be overly planned and productive with, every little single question, and every box has to be checked off. And that kind of goes to what we talked about earlier, just letting, yes, you have to be productive, but there has to be a little bit of, of a fluidness to what you're doing, daily. And if you have all those things, the problem is that when you see boxes unchecked, I mean, it's important to have tasks and lists, but if you feel like every box has to be checked, you will go crazy, right? You'll feel so, and it starts to actually affect other things, mindset, your motivation, your heart set, your limiting beliefs, all these things that kind of just start creeping in because you feel like, man, I just have not, completed what I set out to complete today. I've been there. I know you've been there. Well, almost most people have been there. So I think that's a very, very, very strong point, just to stay fluid. And so speaking of fluid, I'm going to sneak one little thing in, and then let's see how we can kind of bring that back around to staying organized. One thing, and again, it goes back to this lessons learned over the years. I thought that every moment of my waking available time had to be entirely focused on business and the tasks. With that fluid part that you talked about, I am more productive now, giving myself some grace, but also setting myself up for the day with potentially some thoughts and tasks that never even make it to my list. And so one of the things I want to mention is, how does your morning typically start out? And once I started to adopt visualization and meditation, wow, like everything changed, right? And now there's this new, well, it's not new, but it's new to me over the last year, is this, this concept of morning notes, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
And morning notes are when you wake up and you're in your kind of meditation state, and you're just thinking about things instead of just drilling into what's in my book, what's in this, I got to set up for this appointment, let me review this person's profile. Instead of doing that, spend a little bit of time just jotting down other things like in your brain. It could be the creative side. It could be like, you know what, today is an absolute beautiful day. I've never seen the sky so blue. And anything that you're kind of just reflecting on, or, I had a great time yesterday with my family, or wouldn't it be great this weekend to go to the park with my kids and do X, Y, Z, whatever it is, whatever is actually on your mind, jot that down, just start to write all that out. And you'll find something so powerful from that. One, you'll actually, carry forward certain things that have to be done. You'll actually create a task from there, but you'll also find that 75 to 80% of it does not need a task or an assignment attached, but it allows you to kind of do this brain dump. And from that, you can dive into the other things with so much more energy. It's amazing.
Oh, I love that. I tend to do that at night. My brain goes at night.
Yeah, either one, night or morning. Yep.
So, but what was funny is that when you said, your morning routine, and I literally posted a story the other day with me, with my laptop on my bed, with my baby beside me. And I was like, I don't think this is what they meant by the 5 a.m. club.
Yeah. That's so funny. Because I love the 5 a.m. club. The concept makes sense, but you know what? I also wake up at 3 a.m. I wake up again at 5 a.m. I wake up again at 6.
I'm all the clubs. I'm all the clubs right now. And what's really cool, you talk about, things that'll make a difference, right? Things that'll make a difference in journaling. And so we've had a couple of different people on the show. And one of the things that have hit home, and I want to address what you said before too, but this is what just came to me, is that be memorable for people, right? Like review your day from the day before, and you would not believe what a simple message to somebody telling them that you were thinking about them. We spent the day yesterday. Izzy had the day off school. Shocking. They have a million days off school down here. And so we spent the day at the pool with some friends that we haven't seen in a while, since the baby was born, actually. And this morning I woke up to a message from her saying, it was so nice to see you. We missed you guys, and like, that is how you should run business. Like, that reminded me I need to
Mm.
reach out to a couple of people today and say how much I enjoy working
Uh,
with them. How much,
As you were saying this, by the way, 3 names popped into my head, and I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. That means so much more than the actual like end goal, right? And I
yes.
shouldn't even say that, because that should be your end goal. Quite frankly, anytime you have any type of relationship with anyone, business or just socially in your life, the end goal should be like completion, happiness, right?
Yeah.
Synergy,
Thank you.
and yeah.
Yeah. And
So
gratitude.
yeah,
Absolute
it's
gratitude
like
for
true
them, right?
gratitude.
Well,
Absolutely, yeah.
what you were saying before that I think is really important is that entrepreneurs feel like they have to be on all the time and working all the time and they're busy
Gosh,
all the time,
yeah.
right? And what happens in the beginning when you first become an entrepreneur, because you're so focused on making an income and you're so focused on making or creating a successful business, you don't want to fail, is that
Mm,
you sacrifice all of your time. I remember this. I sacrificed all my time with my
me
friends
too.
and family, everything, right? Because you have this people pleaser gene that you think that you have to jump when people say jump, right? But
Hmm,
what I've
hmm.
learned as a seasoned entrepreneur is to have
Yes.
boundaries, right? That people may
Oh,
want something right now, they may need it right now. And it's like, okay, I will get to that tomorrow. I will address that tomorrow because today is a day off with my family. And it's okay to do that because we don't have
mm,
an office. We don't have that clocking out at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., whatever it is. We have to be able to create boundaries with people and understand that this happens on our time. This is actually a huge mistake that people make when they
yes.
are going through Messenger, right? Like, say you do
Oh,
business online and you're constantly having conversations. And so they'll pick up the phone before they go to bed at 10 p.m. and respond to somebody instead of having the discipline to be like, I need 8 hours of sleep. I'm going to get up at 9 a.m. or maybe not. Okay. I'm going to get up at 7
eight,
a.m.
8 hours of sleep.
Then
What is this 8 hours you speak of? Anyways, keep going.
I know, right? Actually, I was really good at it. Like from 10:30 till 6:30, we were really good at it for a while,
Okay. All right.
until we had a baby. But you have these 8 hours of sleep. You get up, you have a coffee. You're like, okay, this is the beautiful thing. You get to decide what your morning routine looks like. You're not rushing
Mm,
around like a crazy person. And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to respond to anybody that responded to me last night from 5 p.m. on. You can
yeah.
still keep those hours as an entrepreneur and have boundaries and batch your responses.
Yeah.
And by the way, that actually is more time efficient than talking to people all day.
Oh, so true. And that was going to be one of the things I was going to talk about, is just pocketing little sections of time right throughout your day. And you're right. Whenever, and I still do this, whenever I have a day that isn't completely booked up, well, I do have some days that are line on line. They just work out that way. And it does become very overwhelming at times. But the days that seem to be, have a little bit more gaps and things of that nature, where you really could spend that time focusing on those like long-term projects or something that you're just wanting to get completed, that requires some time, right, throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, whatever it may be, is yes, when you find yourself scrolling, whether it's productive, meaning Messenger, replying back to people, or whether it is, of course, Facebook or any other social media source, even though we call it, we're cultivating business, it does become a distraction. And if you don't set those boundaries, as you just stated, even for those activities, then it can overwhelm you. And 15 minutes can turn into 45 minutes. I think I saw a study by Forbes many years ago that actually talked about that. When our brain actually thinks that we've just been on for about 5 minutes, I'm just going to look really quick. I've got a quick lunch break or a coffee break, whatever it may be. It's typically 5x. So 5 minutes in your brain is 25 minutes that you've just spent. So if you've been on Facebook for an hour, that could essentially be like most of your productive waking hours throughout the day, right? That you're just
Yeah.
constantly and you're replying back to people. I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up in regards to set aside the time to respond to everyone, and make that. I would also say communicate that right on the front end too, when you're doing business with people, letting them know, when you ask a question, when you text me, when you message me, those are all great attention grabbers. I will answer those. However, if it's not like urgent, as in, please help me, my house is on fire, I need you immediately, then I will typically try to take those and push them to the end of the day or the following morning, right? So very good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And the other thing, like, it's funny because I ran a team. I've been running teams for a long time, but my team would know Friday night after 7 p.m. Christina's not available because that's her date night with her husband. Like she will not respond. The house could be on fire and she won't respond because that's like you have other resources. That's the beauty of setting up a team is that you have other resources. One of the things that I did, and this is a life hack. So one of the things that I did in the beginning, because I found myself scrolling all day, right? Like it is an addiction, by the way. It's
It is.
just social media is an addiction, like
We've
drugs,
we've
like
we've been
alcohol,
there.
like
Yeah.
sex, like everything, right? It's an addiction. And so what I did was I actually put a time limit, like how you can put time limit on your kids' iPads for
Yes.
certain apps, right? So I put a 2-hour time limit on Facebook and on Messenger. So I had a 2-hour time limit. And so if I realized when that time limit was over that I hadn't done what I needed to on social media, I had to change my behavior, right? Like I was like, ooh, that like actually really showed me that I didn't do what I was supposed to. I just wasted all this time, studying other people
Yeah.
or like looking for post ideas or whatever the stupid stuff is that you waste time on in the beginning. And when I knew that I only had 2 hours, I only did that for a couple of days because I was just like, ooh, I am wasting a ton of time here. So I no longer do that.
Yes.
Now I have to do what I need to do first, right? With all the dollar signs beside it, you eat that
Yeah.
frog, you do that first. And then you're like,
Yes.
okay, if there's any other spare time, then, I could engage with people on social media and get to know them and really be able
Right.
to cultivate relationships. Like that's all valid, but you've got to make the money first and you've got to do those activities first. And so many people don't spend the time doing that. They waste so much time doing things that are not productive.
Yeah. And the other thing is, and just to kind of tag that back in, because we talk about it almost always, it's so important, especially when it even comes to any kind of a prospect or a client call. One of the topics that comes up every single time is taking action. And so once again, imperfect action is better than no action at all. And knowing that in your calendar, whatever it is, you talked about, something that actually brings in the money, it's okay to start your content without it being perfect. It's okay to promote a course without every single module being completed. And in fact, I have found that it's the journey of kicking off module 1 with a group of people that actually feeds into and builds, allows me to create the continuing modules, right? Because even then, when you think that you have every single thing structured and laid out of what's important, once you dive in with real people that think a little bit differently than you, you'll start to find that the things that matter most to your community and others isn't always perfectly in line, isn't always perfectly in line with you. And so sometimes it allows you to pivot along the way or to add little things and tweaks along the way. I love doing that. I love moving forward with content creation, courses, coaching in a fluid manner, still having some structured outcomes, but allowing yourself that freedom to just kind of, change things along the way.
Yeah, I think people, number one, they waste too much time thinking about what they're going to do instead of taking action and like what the perfect module, what the perfect course would look like. They waste way too much time on that instead of studying who their competition is, getting some ideas from that, then making them your own ideas, right? Not ripping off other people's stuff, but like actually studying and doing your own version of that. And then the other piece of it is when we start to think about working in group settings with humans, right? It's diversity. Like you don't know what each person is going through. Not only that, but in the world, things are changing. The markets are changing, all these things. So if you create one evergreen course that you're like, this is the golden goose, this is it, right? In like 6 to 9 months or 3 to 5 years, that information is no longer going to be relevant.
It's probably not even valid. I'm chuckling while you're saying this because, I flew all the way out to Vancouver. It was right in the beginning of COVID, and went all the way from. I'm on the East Coast, right? Flew all the way out to Vancouver to meet with a group of individuals to really do like this hardcore mastermind around building the perfect course. And in doing that, it was fun. It was a great exercise, anyways. I was there to network and do some other things. But in the process of doing that, what I found was that so many people had these ideas that they had been working on for years. And as they started to develop the course, 6 months later, when I did kind of a, kind of a circle back to see how things were going, some people were still working on the same exact content. And I knew that it was going to be, no longer valid. And so again, like you said, taking action, you just have to do it. A lot of it does have to be fluid. Let's talk about, just for the sake of time, so that people actually like, okay, so how do I do this, right? Like, what are some good ways to get organized? And I love technology. I have probably tested almost every system and method there is. At the end, it had to really be something that resonated with me, because maybe what works for me is different than something that works for you and others. So that's important. Just kind of keep that in mind. But I also say that if it's cost that's holding you back, if it's technology, the education, portion of trying to figure something out that's holding you back, in the meantime and through that process, pen, paper, start writing things down, and don't keep it all in here. It's why I talked about journaling first thing in the morning. The more you keep here, the less that it'll actually become reality. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I have a very hefty notes section in my phone. So I have like over 1,000 notes, like a couple thousand notes. I think I'm old school. I love having a hard calendar, like a daily calendar that I can look at and visualize and see people's names on. But also, I think what separates like the men from the boys per se, or the girls
or the women from the girls. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Like, I think that like what separates that is the organization. And what's fascinating to me, and technology has always kind of intimidated me, and I'm just being transparent with that. I like to hire people to do that, but having a CRM and like actually being a grown up in business will take you from like struggling to get to the goal that you wanted to multiplying that tenfold, right? Like, and that's the gap that most people don't do, is that they're too scared, or they're intimidated, or they're like, I don't know how to do that. And so they don't do it. But it's really what separates the people that go on and create massive success, because they have systems in place. They have nurture emails. They have follow-up emails. They have phone numbers. They have a sales team. They have all of these things, because you can't just work harder to get from 100,000 to 7 figures. Like, you can't, it's not you just working more on the hamster wheel and going faster. It's not that. It's how you schedule your time and who you bring in to help you, and the systems that you use to nurture people, to build relationships, to be able to automate things, because you're only one human. And so I use Go High Level, and that's something that has been like, I'll be honest, it's been something that I've been working on for almost a year to get into a place where I'm happy with it. And we continue to put stuff in, right? And the other thing is, people also, the mistake that they make is by using a whole bunch of different things. So they're using Kajabi, ClickFunnels, Go High Level, then they're using MailChimp, and they're using this, and they've got hugely high running costs, because they're not working in alignment or with intention with one program.
Yes. Oh no, so true. And most of these like big box things like Go High Level, they offer like all of that, right? And by the way, we're not endorsed.
We're not paid by this. Like, we're not.
I mean, we can, if Go High Level would like to sponsor us. We're open to that idea. But no, that's absolutely true. And I think that here's where some of this. Oh yeah, exactly. Someone just actually put such a valuable live. Thank you, and thank you, by the way, because these are the things. These are like kind of the hard talks that no one really wants to talk about. They want to talk about their one system that works for everyone. We want to talk about all the things that have worked, the things that have failed, and everything else along the way. But what I wanted to mention in regards to that is, I think it's because I'm going to go back once again to the personal branding aspect of, when I talk about heart set, mindset, and soul set alignment, knowing truly like who you are, what it is you want to promote, or how you want to show up in the world, and to whom you want to serve. You figure these things out, like these elements of like, those things are so important. Then you can plug in the right systems to be able to like carry that, a vehicle to carry your mission. We as entrepreneurs, most of us, we haven't figured that out yet. So we think the next piece of software, the next system, doing this, buying that, heard that this funnel has great results, so I'm going to buy that system when I have 3 other funnel systems. We think that it's the products and services or the next book or the next course that's going to solve all of our problems when we haven't perfectly been aligned with what our mission and purpose is in this world. So I wanted to put that out there, right? Because I still feel like continue to work on self along this journey. It's so important. And I think that the education portion and personal development of self, it needs to be part of your schedule. So we're talking about getting organized. Make the first thing in that morning something, going back to the 5 a.m. club again, is it something that I'm reading for 10 or 15 minutes? Am I educating myself on that? Is it thoughts, am I journaling, putting some ideas down, the creative side of me kind of coming out? Is it also just, maybe listening to a podcast on your way, if you're still at a 9-to-5 job, like what am I doing with my time in the car? All these little things I think are more important than actually the end result, right? It'll get you there quicker. So just kind of keep that in mind as well.
If you have clarity on your offer and clarity on your audience, and you do one thing very well, better than other people, over and over and over again, that's how you scale business.
That's absolutely correct. If you can serve one in a very big way, then you can serve two, and et cetera, et cetera. And you're absolutely right. The other thing, just a couple things that we'll kind of add into it. So I want to talk about technology a moment. We talked about go high level, having a good CRM system. It could be anything, right? It could be absolutely anything. But having a good CRM system, and you're right. Most people, the minute that you actually do a discovery call and you start going through and checking those little like standard boxes, it's like, okay, so what's your mission? Who is it you're serving? When you actually receive, contacts or any type of an agreement or just anything, right? When you've actually been in contact with someone, how do you nurture that relationship? And they're like, I guess I call them back whenever I have time, or something of that nature. You hear that, right? You hear that all the time. And most of the time people live and operate, you see it every day. It's why, again, 93% of most businesses are people that are actually in network marketing, of course, will fail because they feel like the most important person is the one that's in front of me right at this very moment without actually nurturing the relationships that they built. So they sit there. And what I mean by that is Messenger pops up, someone says, hey, what's going on? And now that is my most important relationship. And I'm forgetting about all of these other things, right? Where people were, what were the next steps? How do I pursue, a relationship with this person? So a CRM will help you do that. Huge. The one thing I will state, so I am a firm believer that still pen and paper or the act of pen and paper writing does something so much more powerful than just typing things out all day long. And so 2 things I wanted to add into the conversation. My next big purchase that I've been working on, and again, I'm not promoting this, I'm just sharing something that I've been exploring over the last couple months. And that is I have way too many pads of paper. I have journals all over the place, right? I have a lot. And it's so hard, even though I think I'm doing a pretty good job by putting little tabs on things and writing things down, it's easy to lose like those thoughts and content. And so I didn't want to lose the act of writing something out. And so have you heard of like e-ink or any type of digital tablets or digital paper or e-pads? There's all these different terminologies for it. And it's been really, really big over the last 3-4 years, but they're just not promoted as much. And now, man, I am so impressed. There's a couple different ones out there. So I'm not going to promote them like entirely or tell you which one I'm going to use yet. But if you're interested in any of these, the one I'm looking at is the Onyx Books. It's BOOX. And then there's a few others that just really cater to writing things out. But what I love about it is when you're writing notepads and you're taking notes, it's all searchable now. Like all that content, everything you've ever had. And what's really cool about it is they've perfected the technology over the last few years. And so when you write, it's actually almost just like writing, even sounds and feels, because it's textured screen. It feels like you're writing on paper. It's amazing, right? So
I need to look into that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll send you a couple that I've narrowed it down to. I've narrowed it down to two. One's, well, I'll just might as well say it. Remarkable 2 is one of them at the highest end of this technology, and the other one is the Onyx Books Air. And so, but yeah, really cool stuff. And so I like that. I'm using that now. The other thing that I'm just going to throw out there, and this is kind of more for coaches or people that do Zoom calls. I do probably 5 or 6 a day. So this will be a great tool. Is when we talked about AI, have you used any of the AI companion stuff in Zoom?
Some of it. And I think that what you're talking about, like being searchable, is really important as I sit here and look at my stack of notebooks.
Yeah,
it's
so hard, right? To lose
yeah.
pieces of content. And there's so many different ways that you can even share it with your clients. Like as I'm writing things out and taking notes, you can share it with your clients, or you can actually share it on your screen. So if you're kind of integrating Zoom and other things, I love it. But anyways, no promotion again. I'm just saying that it's a great tool. I still think pen and paper is something that you need to integrate. But when it comes to Zoom AI Companion, want to just mention it. You name it, whatever you want. I have absolutely adopted this in the last month with as many calls that I've been having, because now my conversations are more intentional. Like you and I are right here on screen. We're talking to an audience. We know people will be popping in. We can be very intentional with our thoughts because we're looking at the screen, and you and I are both listening to one another, right, throughout this process. It's the same thing with clients. And I found that when I was sitting here taking notes and doing this through the whole conversation, there were still some gaps there, right? It was almost like you were trying to catch up along the way. And so AI Companion, which is part of my Zoom, and there's many other ones out there, but it's automatically taking notes, right? And although they may not be perfect, it'll actually categorize them. It puts them in paragraphs throughout the whole thing. But what I really like, and it's done a great job, is at the very end when I say, okay, here are our takeaways, and here's our next call that I'd like to set up to discuss these actionable steps 1, 2, 3, that it captures it, and it actually creates it in a list.
Amazing.
So yeah, it really is. So AI can be your friend. And so think of it that way. Think of it as somebody that's basically a companion, somebody that's there kind of helping you with your business. And, don't let it take your entire personal brand or the one-on-one experience away from, the people that you serve. Anyway,
absolutely. No,
wanted to
that
plug
was
those
so
two things
good.
in. Yeah, I mean, because it's just things that I've had to learn over the years, right? And I think that they may not work for everyone, but I think that's a great start. And if it's nothing more than a paper calendar, I think you had mentioned earlier, like that's the best. You got to start with something, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, I just want to go back and touch on this really quickly. We talk about follow-ups and people falling through the gaps and not remembering what their kids' names are, or not remembering where they live, or whatever it is, using a CRM, right? It's interesting because this week I've done 2 trainings on following up and how most people avoid it. Like 44% of salespeople give up after 1 attempt, and only 2% of the sales are made on that first follow-up attempt. Did you know that people say no 4 times before they say yes on average?
Actually, when you said it, I was just going to say that they quit because they're doing it wrong. That's really
right.
what it is.
That's right. Thank you.
We should not be selling, first of all. There's the end result of a transaction between 2 individuals, a contract, an agreement, whatever that may be. But we should never be selling. We should be serving. And if people would just start to change the way they think about that process. And so that means that, Christina, if you call me back or I call you back to basically go over some portion of a conversation we had before, it's more about clarity on that next call. Hey, I just wanted to find out, did you have any more questions around, what we discussed, and how did that resonate with you? I just want to make sure that you have all the resources that you need to make the best decision going forward in your business and in your journey. Like, it's those type of things, right? And it's the same thing on call 2, 3, 4. It absolutely makes sense. At some point, there needs to be a call to action. Otherwise, we fall into this rut where all we are is a source or resource. And I think that we've talked about that on the show before too, right? I mean, how many times have you felt like you're just a charity in business? And I think we all have. So
Yeah.
we need to set boundaries, as you stated earlier. There needs to be a call to action, but just continue to serve, solve a problem. People do not like to be sold to, but people love to buy. Have you ever heard that before? I mean, that's
Yes.
crazy. Like, but it's so true. I know even with me, when I'm inundated by a million different ads or people just always just trying to cram something down my throat. But if we have a conversation and then they just share something with me, or they maybe expose me to some opportunity 3, 4, 5 times, at some point, when I'm ready to buy, I'm ready to buy. And when I'm ready to buy, I'm the first person that typically just pulls this out and says, let's go. And it's typically when they're close to saying no to this relationship, right? So that's another thing too. Like, don't give up in the 11th hour, because it's usually right at the 12th hour that people actually make a decision. So
Yeah, don't be discouraged by that. And the other piece, and Vlad said this, right? Service to many
oh
leads to
yes,
greatness, right? From Jim Rohn.
absolutely.
And it certainly does. And the thing is, you also can get stuck in friend zone. Like, you can get stuck in the friend zone of just having conversations. So you
Been
have
there.
to make the ask, right? But there's a way about it. There's a way that you say it. I've talked to some incredible people, incredible humans that just said, hey, look, I know this is not the right thing for you right now, but I really admire what you do. I love how you show up. I really appreciate you. I would kill to work with you, not like go to jail kill, but like I would.
Oh, there
I
might
would
be
really,
a couple that I would. That's just kidding. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I would really appreciate, like I would appreciate the opportunity. So if anything ever changes, I'm just
Yes.
going to put this out there right now. Can I please be your first call? Can I please be the first call that I'm not
Absolutely.
assuming anything's going to happen in the future, or that I've got the right thing for you that you're going to be in alignment with, but can I be your first call? Because I really value you. And that's all you have to say. And like, maybe have that conversation once a year, believe it or not,
Yes.
in serving people. But it's about support. It's about encouraging. People don't forget that. They don't forget who you are. And so if you're, so concerned about following up and making the sale, you're really missing out on the beautiful piece of business, which is collaborating with amazing humans out there and
Yes.
serving them to what
You.
fits their needs first.
Wow. So I'll just share one little testimony that's happened in the last 2 weeks. I think I had mentioned to you guys 5 weeks ago, I spoke on another virtual stage, ended up with way too many appointments once again, right? Ended up being a total of 53 appointments. It's really hard to book that many appointments with individuals, but I did it. And some have been strung out for weeks now. Some cancellations along the way, or just shifting things around. That happens in business. But in the last 10 days, I was able to do have amazing opportunity with 2 brand new clients. And it all comes down to the keyword you just said, collaboration. Because I found that at the end of the day, there was either fear or something holding them back from making a decision. But I felt like their mission and their purpose and the community they served were so in line with myself and my own values and mission that it made sense for us just to do business now. And so the offer was, why don't we collaborate? Let's think of a product or service that we can bring to market with your experience and my expertise, and let's just impact thousands of lives. And that alone, right? Just like you said, sometimes you just have to put it in a different verbiage, or just a different context, that like, I'm in this with you, right? Like I'm willing to put some things on the line to make this happen, because I believe in you. I believe in this. And it's so genuine. But anyway, so I just wanted to put that out there, because that's another thing as well. And to kind of stay on topic, bringing all of that around, you would never be able to do that if you didn't have a CRM, a scheduler, something with intention to follow up, or if it was nothing more than just keeping them on your kind of nurturing content, so that you were putting things out there, educating them in the process, whatever it may be. Because how many times in business, Christina, have you heard or have you experienced that if you don't nurture, if you don't follow up, a year would go down? Have you ever had somebody say that they signed up with the same company that you're involved with, or the same product, or they're involved in something, and that you were the first one that exposed them to it, but there was no communication between like then and now. And so when they were ready to make that purchase, they just went with whoever. actually pulled at their heartstrings in that moment. So that's
That's
a tough thing to go through, but I use those in my own experience as kind of a lessons learned as well.
That's a great lesson. It's a life lesson with business. And I appreciate that. You got to be top of mind. 30 to 50% of people make the decision to buy from the person that is the fastest to get back to them at that time and top of mind, right? So how are you staying top of mind? Is that in an email? Is that in a text message? Is that on social media? Are you constantly interacting with them so they actually see your social media posts? All those things become really relevant in business. And again, that personal branding piece, which I know that you and I both love, is the piece that brings it all back and allows you to kind of be able to evolve with people's needs during that time. And you have to be willing to evolve. And I want to thank you for this conversation, Robert. I think it is really valuable to people.
I think that's great. And I know we kind of just threw it together last minute, but we felt it was important enough. It impacts us daily. And so if we could share just a few tips, if you guys have other ideas around this, please put it in the comments, even if you watch it later on replay, and we will respond to you directly. And we'll build some more, conversations around this. The last little bit I'm just going to kind of leave us with here, because I thought this was also powerful, is two particular things. One, I'm going to repeat what I said here in the very beginning to kick things off, because I think it's pretty profound. We beat ourselves up over productivity. And so the key to a good system is to allow yourself this grace to let go and to not feel compelled to do every single thing that's in your brain or on paper, right? Just know that some tasks, need to take a little longer, or they were actually meant to die. They shouldn't be on your list anymore, and sometimes we can't even let go of that. So it's important. That's an important lesson. And the other thing that I love when it comes to staying organized, staying energized, and just focused on things is this: design and create a system around this that is based on rewards and not fear. So think about that just for a moment, right? Not fear, meaning that if I don't get this and this done, I've failed. Think of it more like, here's 6 items. If I can get 3 main items or these 2 major tasks completed today, then that's a win. And so think of it more in that mindset. Other than that, we'll see you on the next episode of the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, Robert.